Här är veckans hemuppgift, The Magic Finger 4. Och här kommer orden på engelska. Worm, voice, train. It began to get dark. Tin of biscuits. 2 leaves. Kitchen. 1 leaf. Dirty. Don't worry. Please call me later. Try it. Surprise. Slug. Lägg märke till skillnaden i stavning mellan 1 leaf med ett F och när man ska säga att det blir flera stycken löv så ändras F och blir leaves med ett V istället. After a while he said, "That's enough sticks. Now I want leaves and feathers and things like that to make the inside nice and soft." The building of the nest went on and on. It took a long time, but at last it was finished. "Try it," said Mr. Gregg, hopping back. He was very pleased with his work. "Oh, isn't it lovely?" cried Mrs. Gregg, going into it and sitting down. "I feel I might lay an egg any moment." The others all got in beside her. "How warm it is," said William. "And what fun to be living so high up," said Philip. "We may be small, but nobody can hurt us up here." "But what about food?" said Mrs. Gregg. "We haven't had a thing to eat all day." "That's right," Mr. Gregg said. "So we will now fly back to the house and go in by an open window and get the tin of biscuits when the ducks aren't looking." "Oh, we will be packed to bits by those dirty great ducks," cried Mrs. Gregg. "We shall be very careful, my love," said Mr. Gregg, and off they went. But when they got to the house, they found all the windows and doors closed. There was no way in. "Just look at that beastly duck cooking at my stove," cried Mrs. Gregg as she flew past the kitchen window. "How dare she? And look at that one holding my lovely gun," shouted Mr. Gregg. "One of them is lying in my bed," yelled William, looking into a top window. "And one of them is playing with my electric train," cried Philip. Oh dear," said Mrs. Gregg. "They have taken over our whole house. We shall never get it back. And what are we going to eat?" "I will not eat worms," said Philip. "I would rather die." "Or slugs," said William. Mrs. Gregg took the 2 boys under her wings and hugged them. "Don't worry," she said. I can mince it all up very fine, and you won't even know the difference. Lovely slug burgers, delicious worm burgers." "Oh no," cried William. "Never," said Philip. "Disgusting," said Mr. Gregg. "Just because we have wings, we don't have to eat bird food. We shall eat apples instead. Our trees are full of them. Come on." So they flew off to an apple tree. But to eat an apple without holding it in your hands is not at all easy. Every time you try to get your teeth into it, it just pushes away. In the end, they were able to get a few small bites each. And then it began to get dark, so they all flew back to the nest and lay down to sleep. It must have been at about this time that I, back in my own house, picked up the telephone and tried to call Philip. I wanted to see if the family was all right. "Hello," I said. "Quack," said a voice at the other end. "Who is it?" I asked. "Quack, quack." "Philip," I said, "is that you?" "Quack, quack, 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 quack." "Oh, stop it," I said. Then there came a very funny noise. It was like a bird laughing. I put down the telephone quickly. "Oh, that magic finger," I cried. "What has it done to my friends?" That night, while Mr. and Mrs. Gregg and Philip and William were trying to get some sleep up in the high nest, a great wind began to blow. The tree rocked from side to side, and everyone, even Mr. Gregg, was afraid that the nest would fall down. Then came the rain. It rained and rained, and the water ran into the nest, and they all got as wet as could be. And oh, it was bad, a bad, bad night. At last the morning came, and with it the warm sun. "Well," said Mrs. Gregg, "thank goodness it's over. I never want to sleep in a nest again." She got up and looked over the side. "Help!" she cried. "Look, down there." "What is it, my love?" said Mr. Gregg. He stood up and peeped over the side. He got the surprise of his life. On the ground below them stood the 4 enormous ducks, as tall as men, and 3 of them were holding guns in their hands. One had Mr. Gregg's gun, one had Philip's gun, and one had William's gun. The guns were all pointing right up at the nest.